Hello and welcome to Bonnie's presentation, all about writing your literature review like a boss. That's what I'm going to call it, and I'm going to roll with that because it sounds kind of cool. And please imagine some swelling background music right now that's just like energizing and like powerful, boom, 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 like that. Okay. Oh my gosh, please don't make me do that intro again. That's so embarrassing. All right. I've been writing literature reviews for a long time, and actually it's my favorite part of any research paper. It is an opportunity to help show the reader the important parts of what's already been done and what we know is evidenced already in the field. What I'm going to do now is just run you through some of these steps. Now, these steps are only tried and true by myself. I did not learn these steps from anybody else. It's through experience and learning and reflecting. So what I'll do is I'll take you through the steps that I adopt every single time that I write a paper. It is quite a structured approach, and I'll go through each of these one by one. Please feel free to stop the recording at any time, pause it. I can also send you through the slides. Alrighty, I'm going to share my screen because, of course, I've put together some slides for you. Write your lit review like a boss. See, I told you, background music, there needs to be something there. Breaking down the steps. Oh my gosh. I hope you can hear what I'm hearing right now. There's like a theme, there's a background theme to this. All right, super excited. When we write your literature review, so whether you're writing it for a publication or you're writing it for your first year proposal, what I would get you to do before you actually start looking at the literature or anything like that is we need to know your core areas. So every single study has scope. There are things that are within the study. There are things that sit outside the study. Where we start to overwhelm ourselves with our writing, particularly when it comes to the literature review, is where we don't know our boundaries. And we start to think that information that's really interesting and cool should be included. Now, when you write a first year proposal or a paper, there's no expectation for you to cite everything that has ever been invented in your topic. If you were writing a PhD by thesis, then your literature review would be extraordinarily comprehensive. If you are doing your PhD by compilation, then typically there will be a paper, which is either a systematic or a scoping review, sometimes even a conceptual paper that will actually form your literature review chapter. They are separate approaches that I would use, so I won't be talking about those. The techniques that I'm using, that I'll introduce you to now, are only for writing papers or first year proposals. All right, so first thing, know your core areas. So you will see here a very, very large circle, and then a medium circle, a smaller circle, and then a teeny tiny circle. All right. Within the context of your study, there will be themes and sub-themes. The context of your study, no doubt, will be higher education, because that's what we do. We're educational researchers. So that big red circle in the middle there, that's more than likely going to be higher education. This larger circle is something that sits within higher education. It could be a very, very broad topic, such as equity or assessment or a particular learning style, something. And then what we're doing in your study is we break it down into the smallest tiny pieces. And I want to show you an example now so you can see what I'm saying. Okay, I've completely made this up for the purpose of this video. So please roll with me. So the study that I'm going to use as an example for this video it has a justification. That is, there is a reason why we need to study this thing. So in this example, the reason we need to study something is because we want to enhance the employability skills and work readiness of students in non-vocational degrees. And students need to strengthen their articulation of learning in WIL assessments in order to meet that, in order to strengthen their employability skills. They've got to get better at articulating their learning in assessments. Now, that's my justification. Now, if you would like, you can pause the video now and just think about the research justification for your study, just within the parameters of this study. This is the why. It's really important we know the why of our study. Why are we doing it? Now, here's a little clue. No doubt, your justification has something to do with student learning. No doubt, your justification has something to do with enhancing employability of those students and getting them work ready. If you're with Michelle and I as supervisors, it'll be a will study. So it's likely to have some sort of justification, which is similar to this example. Your research aim is the next thing. It's really important to be clear on your aim. Now, remember from the previous slide, you've got this really tiny little dot all the way down here. That little dot is actually going to be your research aim. I'll explain these in just a moment. So for the example here, the aim is to explore the perceptions of educators who design will in non-vocational degrees. And we're looking at the effectiveness of those educators of their assessment design for students who articulate their learning in a will context. So in this example, let's look at the circles. Okay, that big red circle is higher education. It's probably going to be the same for yours. The next circle in this example is assessment. So have a think about what yours might be. Within assessment, a smaller circle is will. So we can assess learning many different ways. Will is a pedagogical strategy, so it's actually much smaller and can sit within assessment. In this example, I also wanted to take a look at just non-vocational degrees. So we're just adding some parameters and context around our study. So it's the smallest circle, which is the yellow one. Now, the way in which you investigate assessment in will in non-vocational degrees is, again, another tiny circle that goes afterwards. Just this little bit is what we're going to investigate. We're going to investigate assessment in will in non-vocational degrees by looking at, and in this example, the perceptions of educators. This study, assessment in will in non-vocational degrees, could be done a number of ways. You could be surveying students. You could look at industry partners. You could actually be looking at a cross-institutional study. It could be a national study. It could be looking at a will intervention. It could be looking at a program of professional learning. But for this study, the tiny purple dot all the way down there is that it's choosing to look at the perceptions of educators. Okay, so unpacking those key topics, you'll see on the second line there, key topics. So we've got higher education, assessment, will, non-vocational degrees, and then all the way down, perceptions of educators who design will. I want you to be able to do this now for your own study. So pause the video if you can and think about those key topics going from big all the way down through to small. All right, now that you have done that, what I actually want to do is when we consider the literature, we actually start at the introduction. We don't start with the literature review. Literature starts right at the very beginning. Not so much in your abstract, because your abstract is another story. I can do that in a video another time for you. But your introduction is going to be the place where you are selling the why. You are selling your justification, why this study is important. Who is saying this study is important? The types of things we want in our introduction is what has happened in recent years. Was there a grant? Was there a shift in government? Was there a strategic agenda for higher education? We need to know what has happened. We need to hear the commentary from higher education stakeholders, industry stakeholders, and/or government stakeholders if they are important. Go big picture. The introduction highlights the backgrounds, the significance of your study, and it sets up this space. Now, when I write an introduction, now this is more for your paper. If you're doing your first year proposal, the introduction is usually a little bit bigger, but I'm just going to talk about writing a paper for a moment. When I write the introduction, I am definitely thinking about this upside down triangle, or an inverted triangle is another way of saying it. The introduction of every paper that I will write has 4 paragraphs. Okay, and I will tell you right now what is inside each of those 4 paragraphs. So paragraph 1, it starts with a really bang on topic sentence, a powerful topic sentence that takes me straight to the context, that would take the reader straight into understanding the importance of that context and sets up the paper. Basically, we're setting up the paper. So an example of an opening sentence is one that I've got here. In response to a rapidly changing global labour market and increasing expectations that higher education develops employability-related competencies of graduates, governments and institutions have introduced strategies to enhance students' access to work integrated learning. Yeah. Now, I must say that particular topic sentence I have borrowed from a lovely PhD candidate, because I saw that sentence. I thought, I'm going to grab that. So Emily Jones, if you're watching this, I've just gone and stolen your sentence as an exemplar of an outstanding topic sentence for an introduction. Now, the rest of that paragraph, so paragraphs are only usually about 4 or 5 sentences. The rest of that paragraph, using references, unpacks that. Unpacks governments, what has been going on, any sort of been shifts or changes, increases, strengthening of certain areas that focus on graduate employability related competencies. The second paragraph in your introduction poses problems. Okay, your second paragraph poses problems. Don't pose the problem too quickly in the opening paragraph, because we're still setting the scene and selling your why. The second paragraph poses your problem, often starting with words like however or despite or considering, these kind of verbs that draw us into problematizing what's something that's happening. So an example of a topic sentence for this second paragraph is, however, despite concerted efforts of government support, little progress has been made to transform WIL in non-vocational degrees. Please excuse my typos. So as you can see here, I've introduced a new dimension to the field, and that is non-vocational degree. In the topic, in the first paragraph, I haven't talked about non-vocational degrees. I'm talking about it here in the second when I'm starting to pose a problem. Now, in this second paragraph, I'll draw in some literature of people who are saying exactly this, that there are concerns. What are their concerns in particular, and why are those concerns so valid? And then I would flesh out that. Again, we're looking around 4 sentences for paragraph 2. Paragraph 3, you're about to offer a resolution to this problem, okay? Using words like therefore, or given this, or considering these circumstances, okay? So the topic sentence brings you back. The reader's going to be really happy to read this third paragraph, because they're going to be like, oh, okay, you're setting me up to help me find the solution to this problem. Paragraph 3, therefore, in order to support the well-being of all students, particularly those in non-vocational degrees, it is necessary to explore the perceptions of educators who design these programs. So I've offered you a resolution, and I've told you what is a potential solution to the problem. And you'll see I'm using all of the key themes and topics that we've addressed earlier in your study. The second sentence in paragraph 3 is the aim of this study, or the aim of this paper, the aim of this research. Always make sure you have those words, the aim of this study / problem / research. The reader wants to be satisfied that you're resolving the issue, that you're resolving the concern, and they need to, by now, they need to know, well, how are you doing that? What is your intention with this paper? So the aim of this study is to, and then you offer a little bit more detail, just a tiny little bit. This paragraph again, 3, 4 sentences. The final paragraph sometimes is subsumed into the third. The final paragraph is showing the reader the structure of this paper. It's saying, I'm going to do this by, first of all, highlighting key literature. Next, I'm going to examine the theoretical framework in order to look at particular traits of educators or something or other. Findings are analysed through a certain type of analysis framework, and conclusions wrap up the paper or the study. Inverted triangle for your introduction. 4 paragraphs, that's it. That's what you need. Big question why, you're selling the importance of your study. Second paragraph, problematizing it in some sort of way. Third paragraph, offering a resolution, which is the aim of your study. Fourth paragraph, showing the reader the signposting of how you're going to get there and what they can expect throughout the paper. Now, again, pause the video, maybe do a table or just go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want you to think about just your topic sentences for your introduction. If you're writing a paper, again, if this is your first year proposal, it's going to look a little bit different, but your first year proposal should still touch on each of these 4 elements. is often bolstered. It can be a little bit longer or bigger. All right. Okay, now that you've taken a look at the introduction, we're going to move to the literature review. All right, in the literature review section of your first year proposal or your paper, the way I have written these is that I have always followed a structure. Never once have I pulled up a paper and just started writing. Never, not even once. I have always used a structure so that I am navigating the literature. It's not the literature telling me what to write. That is really important, okay? I know that these people who have written papers out there in the field that's been published and they're well cited, I know that they can seem like experts. But when it comes to your literature review, you are in control. You are in the driver's seat. You are going to tell the reader what is important. And you do that by, first of all, considering the structure of your literature review. A few things that are really important to set up your literature review before we get to the structure is making sure that you have an up-to-date endnote. That's really, really important. Ensuring that any reports or white papers that are related to the topic are in that endnote as well. And ensuring that you do know which papers are the most similar to your study. Okay, so if you've found a research paper that's very similar to your study, which perhaps calls for further research, it's important that you know which paper or papers are the ones that you feel are really aligned. Okay, so all that kind of background work, getting it and known up to date, that's something that you continue to do and you refresh yourself across your whole research career. As new papers come up, you just dump them into your endnote, or you might be using Zotero or something else. Okay, so we're going to start with the plan. The plan for the literature review is what we're doing is we're basically going through those subtopics to work our way right down to your research questions, to the purpose of your research, the aims of your research. Again, think of the inverted triangle for this one too. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3 is how I want you to think about your literature review. Very rarely will you have a Section 4 and 5 for a paper. In your first year proposal, you may have a Section 4 and 5, but if you're writing a research paper, you normally only see 3, sometimes 2. Very rarely will you only see one section that's only 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs, very rarely. So 3 is a good number to be thinking about. Each of these sections are divided into paragraphs. Paragraphs are always 3 to 6 paragraphs, okay? I've written 3 for each of these ones, but very rarely will you have 2 for a section. It's probably not enough. If you have more than 6, then you probably need to divide it into 2 sections and think about the intention of that section. Remember, the literature review is not your paper. The literature review is not the contribution of your paper. The literature review is showing the reader which research is important that has preceded your study. All right. So, as an example here, Section 1, paragraph, Section 2, paragraph, Section 3, paragraph. I want to show you what I've got here. This is how I do my literature reviews. Okay. For example, Section 1, I would have a title that would say Assessment Design in Higher Education. Under this title, it's the subheading, so I'll say that, sorry. Under this subheading, Assessment Design in Higher Education, I would have 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is on the importance of assessment for learning. The second paragraph is about types of assessment. The third paragraph, I would put in problems with assessment. So right now, you can see that even within that section, I'm trying to show you a narrative of the literature. I'm starting again with the big thing, importance. I'm selling my why. Here's why assessment's so important. I'm showing you what has been done with assessment, so showing you some different types of assessment. And then I'm coming down to a paragraph which is called Problems or Concerns with Assessment, because I'm trying to set up the study as we get down. I'm trying to set up the gap. So and I'll go through paragraph structure in just a moment, but in each of these, you could right now think about the topic sentence. So let's, again, assessment design and HE is your subheading. Importance of assessment for learning. Already, I could tell you a topic sentence right now. In recent years, assessment in higher education has become increasingly important as scholars have realised the connection between assessment and deep student learning. Full stop. I just made that up. Okay. And then after that, I would go and find the literature that backs up that topic sentence. So that's just one section. You see how it's really well planned. Second section, knowing that my second sub-theme, go back to the beginning, your second sub-circle, which was smaller, was will. Remember those big circles? So for will, I would want to cover will in higher education. I'd probably go through definitions or what it looks like, why it's important in one paragraph. Second paragraph, I might go through modes. What is the most common modes of will? And what are alternate modes of will? What has happened in recent years? Has there been any turns or has there been any impetus or increase in a certain type of mode? And then the third paragraph, just like what I did in the other one, the third paragraph, I want to set up the study. I'm problematizing something or I'm introducing an aspect of will that requires additional attention. And so in this one, it would be will in non-vocational degrees. Oh, there's a concern, and the literature highlights issues with non-vocational degrees because of the lack of mandatory nature of will in these degrees. So again, that final paragraph, I'm setting up that gap. Final one there, what we do is we pull together the top one and with the second one, and we say, well, what do we know about assessment in will? Okay, so you can see that section 1, section 2, and the third section, we're going, okay, well, what do we know about these two things? And now here, you see, we're really narrowing it right down, aren't we? And so we might cover what do we know about, what have people been said, what have they found, what are students' perceptions, what are educators' perceptions, problems is the second paragraph. So what are the problems about assessing will? And then finally, we're going to offer the reader a resolution. Given these problems for assessment in will, given the problems with will in non-vocational degrees, this study, there is an urgent need for this study to address this. And we're going to do that by exploring perceptions of educators who design will. And then, of course, you know, after your literature review is your methodology. You could also have your theoretical framework come after or before your literature review. It usually comes after, offers another lens. We can talk about theoretical framework and writing that in another video. Okay, so literature review structure example. So pause the video. I want you to come up with 3 subheadings. The first subheading is a big topic. Your second subheading is the context in which you're looking at something. The third subheading is what we know about the two of them. Okay, I'll go for it. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to put some bullet points in there for the paragraphs that go under each of these sections. Okay, so just take the first one, for example. What is your topic? I want you to move from big kind of definitional stuff, what's being done, what do we know, through to something else important in that. So it could be modes or increasingly literature has been focusing on this particular area. And then the third paragraph are concerns or problems or new practices that have emerged, sort of setting up your study. I want you to do that now. I want you to think about how you would navigate the reader through each of those sections, through your paragraphs, through the intention of each of those paragraphs. Pause the video now. Alrighty, now you have your literature review structure. If that was a little bit challenging, please reach out. We can have a conversation, but it's important to sit and reflect on the structure that will get you all the way down to that research aim. All right. Now you have your high level structure for your literature review. The next step is to focus deep into the paragraph. And I'm going to show you the technique that I use to write a paragraph. Writing paragraphs like a boss. Oh, that's Bluey. I'll keep going. Paragraphs. Okay. So you saw in your structure, you've got your subheadings for your literature review structure. Under your structure, you have paragraphs. Let's take one of those paragraphs. I'm going to show you a 3-step process for writing a paragraph for your literature review. Step 1, you're going to do bullet points to paraphrase the findings of 4 to 8 papers. So the good thing is, in this paragraph, you already know what you're writing about. We found it out earlier before. So you know the scope of what you need to write. You know that, for example, this one is just going to be about what is will. This is the example that I've got here. What is will? What I'm going to do, knowing that this paragraph needs to be about what is will, I'm going to go to my EndNote. I'm going to find the paper that I know is the most popular one. Perhaps it's the most cited. You could go onto Google Scholar and just go, what is will, and find out which is the most cited paper. That could be a great way of starting. Once you have that one, in order to translate it into your literature review, what you need to know is, how does their paper answer the question that you have for your paragraph? There's no need to read the whole paper at this point. So I'm assuming that you know of the paper. If you don't know of the paper, then you're going to have to read it at some point. But the purpose of this paragraph is just the will, just unpacking the will. So take one paper, for example. Here I've got Oral 2011. Knowing my frame is what is will. I'm going to look at Oral 2011 and I'm going to find the parts where she tells me what is will. Okay, so Oral says will means learning through work with students, uni and industry. So she says that. So I'm going to, in my bullet point, I'm going to write will means that. Oh, she's also saying that will is distinct. Australian will is distinct from work-based learning in America, and that was coined in the 1990s. Okay, so I'm going to write that in this bullet point as well, because that seems to be quite important and related to will. Then I'm going to put in brackets at the end of my bullet point, Oral 2011. That is how I'm going to use a paper to work for me. All right. Now, you're going to do this for 4 to 8 papers. With the lens that you've got in your mind, you're going to go to 4 to 8 papers and think about, okay, what is will? What are they saying about the meaning or definition of will? Now, in order to find those papers, you could do 1 or 2 things. Actually, I'm going to say 3 things. The next thing you could do is go to your Zotero or EndNote and put in the keynote will or will definition. It'll probably spit out a whole bunch of papers for you if you've got that EndNote up to date. And then you're going to go onto Google Scholar and find out which of those are the most highly cited, which of those are the seminal works, and make sure that you use those ones. That's the first option. The second option is you just go straight to Google Scholar and you write definition of will, what is work integrated learning, and you see what Google Scholar pops up. And you're going to take a look at the most highly cited papers, and you're going to think about using those here in your definition. The other thing you could do is, if you know that there is a seminal paper, say, for example, Oral 2011, or in this case, it's actually Patrick 2009 is the seminal paper, because I know that because it's will. So I would then go to Patrick et al. 2009, and I'll do something called purling. Purling is where you look through the reference list of a paper for breadcrumbs or signposts to other papers that would be interesting and aligned to this topic. It's called purling. So I might write it out for Patrick, and then I'll go to the reference list and I'll look at the topics of each of those papers. If they seem reasonable, I might go follow that paper trail, look it up, see if that says something about the will definition. Remember, you're only looking at will definition. You're not looking at anything else just now, just will definition. And then once I've found another paper, so say, for example, I found this one by Mahalamu and Bocolo in 2008. Perhaps that was by Google Scholar because the dates are wrong here. But what they're saying is that will occurs in a practical setting as well as the classroom setting. But they actually says it includes vocational education. That's interesting. I'm going to write that down as well. And then from there, I've also found that a paper that has cited them is Billet 2009. And the title of that paper is also Work Integrated Learning something. So I go, I'm going to find out what Billet et al. Says about will. I go to them and they say that will also occurs in practical settings as well as classroom settings. Now, at this stage, I'm just paraphrasing what that paper says and making sure that I have the citation at the end. That's point 1. At this step, it's also important to write down any quotes that come out that are particularly interesting that relate to the purpose of this paragraph. If I find a quote, I make sure that I put it in quotation marks and I do the in-text citation correctly in using the page number. This is what I do every single time. Usually this bullet point step kind of takes me about half a day to a day because it's where I'm really looking through the literature, but I've got a very keen lens that I'm looking for. Okay, that's step one. Step two. Each paragraph is divided into 3 sections. There is a topic sentence, there are expanding sentences, and then there is a summarizing sentence. Your topic sentence, you could have already written back when you were doing your structure. This is, I kind of made one up before. So the topic sentence for this one is, will is a widely accepted term for activities and programs for learning through work. Now, because of what I've done previously, all of this really, really good work with these bullet points, I can now look at these and go, aha, Oral says a very similar thing about learning through work as Patrick does. I'm going to use both of them for my topic sentence. Oral, Patrick, bam. In this second step, what you're doing is synthesizing. What we want to avoid in paragraphs is Oral says this, Patrick says that, Millett says this, Smigel and Harris say that. We don't want that. Okay. Instead, we want a synthesis. Remember, you're running the show, not the literature. You're running the show. Okay. Expanding sentences. So here's where you look through these bullet points and you go, are they all similar or is there something different? Oh, hang on a second. This Smigel and Harris, they say it's debated whether will is specific to higher education. Oh, that's really interesting because over here, Mahalamabu and Buku said that it could include vocational education, but nobody else said that. So now I'm starting to paint a picture to say, actually, it's not all straight, is it? It's quite contested. So what I might do in my expanding sentences is find a way to sort of pull these stories, multiple stories together. So interestingly enough, earlier in this one, Oral had said where the definition began. I think that's really interesting. So I'm going to write that as another sentence. Will emerge in the 1990s and attempt to blah, blah, blah. But now I'm going to talk about these different definitions. I'm going to try and pull it together. I'm just going to note here, not everyone agrees. It's beta. It's debated whether it's specific to higher education. I've got my in-text citation. Does it include vocational education? In-text citation. Is it multiple educational practical settings? And I know that I've drawn 2 of them because 2 people have said that. Pull it together. My summarizing sentence wraps up the paragraphs and basically is giving up the main points, summarizing it all and highlighting what's important. So I might say something here like, look, they might have some similar things in common. The things that they have in common is that they facilitate undergraduate learning and there's experiences within industry. And also there's a number of really common modes, and that's, placements, projects, simulations, etc. All of that is how you start bringing and synthesizing that literature together. And this is what it looks like in the end. In Australia, will is the widely accepted term for activities and programs for learning through work. Oral and Patrick. The term will emerged in the late 1990s in an attempt to set Australian work learning initiatives apart from other Western concepts of work-based learning. The scope of will, however, is contestable. It is debated whether will is specific to higher education or includes vocational education, or whether it occurs in multiple educational and practical settings or precludes classroom-based work-based learning. Summary sentence, while diverse in approaches and structures, will programs share a common purpose to facilitate undergraduate learning experiences through work with an industry or community partner involvement. For example, practical placements, industry projects, simulations, or authentic experiences, full stop. Here, I'm about to give you a little gift of gold. Moving between this and this, for me, it has taken years and years of practice. Alrighty, I'm going to finish there. And I'm going to conclude by saying, boom, like a boss. I wish you all the very best with writing your literature review for your paper or first year proposal. You're going to be amazing. Take it slow, do it in steps, do the structure, plan and prepare. Don't let the literature overwhelm you. Each paragraph is only 4 to 6, maybe up to 8 references. That is it, no more. You're not covering everything. Wishing you all the very, very best.